Many times it has been said that humans are social creatures, and many times I've made an intro like this, and it's simply just the fact that humans need connections with others to be fully actualized, and many of people's problems stem from that they in one way or another lack some sort of connection that they deeply desire. However, this intense need for connection between humans is something that modern society greatly hinders in being fulfilled, and in some cases is also directly against. Modern society is one that is built to enforce and encourage many things that are plainly self-destructive, because of the socio-cultural ideology that it has embraced. It is one of division and isolation that cuts apart the crucial connections humans need. It does this by putting people against each other, driving rifts in between them for having slightly different beliefs, lifestyles, and inherent traits, telling people to attack others for those differences, and then keeps them apart with self-interest, hostility, and inferior alternatives. And then it worsens remaining relations by making them more self-centered, less intimate, and less fulfilling. These detrimental effects are not entirely but mostly caused by the embracement of individualistic interests. I sound like a broken clock. Individualistic interest has made it so people unconsciously think about what they themselves as an individual can get out of every relationship they have with someone else, and what they can get out of being in every community that they are in, turning their motives for them into being about self-interest instead of something greater. The traditional reason to have a relationship is having one because you have a good connection to someone or a community, whereas the new reason is having a relationship because there is gain to the self in having that connection. And that is something most vile in modern romantic relationships and in communal relationships. In a modern romantic relationship, for example, both halves have it because they themselves gain feeling good from the perception of having a special connection and intimacy, even though the perceived intimacy is in reality only physical, which is frequently also only a perceived special intimacy because of not being a real union in any meaningful way, both halves still preserving their individualistic interest as their highest one. That's why in modern relationships, it's common for things such as the infamous girl going to the club scantily clad when her boyfriend doesn't want her to go, or people not letting their partner go through their phone even though they've been together for a long time happens, which both are of course commonly because they're cheating, because they are only in the relationship because some of their individual self-interest happens to line up with the other in it, so they get together. Whereas in a traditional one, both halves have it because they already have a special connection, where they then start building a stronger interconnectedness together that turns them into a sort of singular super self, which then benefits from the union into creating such an extremely intense intimacy like no other, where the individual interest is abandoned for an intimately shared interest, a unified will in a unified life. That's why traditional relationships are made out of a masculine part and a feminine part, because those two elements are complementary and thus are more capable of being intertwined into one greater thing, being weaved into a single perfect and beautiful nature, like how the body of a man and the body of a woman are made to be perfectly weaved together into a singular loving and beautiful being. The individualistic interest also creates quarrels with most forms of community, because to it, maintaining communal relationships is too much effort for too little self-gain. Communal relationships are largely impersonal, where you don't personally know most of the people you share the relationship with, they're the ones you have with society and such. And because of the materialistic and selfish nature of the individualistic mindset, it sees it as too arbitrary and having too little benefit to maintain a relationship with. Seeing not the gain in nurturing a mutually beneficial relationship of giving out to improve the community as a whole, which will in return create a better community that will give back the good that was given, just in a less direct and unclear way, not caring or seeing that their own effort can improve the community and create an improved environment for them to be in. Individualism is in the current day on its last campaign in its war on relationships, trying to destroy the traditional way of friendship, its hardest battle yet, because of the all-consuming need for humans to have actual, true, deep connections, and not just alignments of desire not just alignments of self-wants that happens to be achievable together, which is the exact opposite of what it's a religion of self-worship needs to carry out worship properly. The traditional way of friendship it wants to replace is where you are in it because you have a good bond and have fun and good times when you're together, and thus friends for the sake of the relationship, which then mutually benefits both parties, replacing it with the new way where you are friends because it benefits you and the other party also thinks it benefits them enough to have it, both being in it for selfish benefit that just happens to be mutual. The modern way of, in reason to have any sort of relationship, is solely for the self to gain and earn, to fulfill the self's archaic, fundamental need for social connections to others, and it attempts to do this in a fundamentally vile and impossible way by focusing on itself, while the superior traditional way in reason to is to have one because of a pre-existing link of likeness which then gets further manifested into a relationship through the pre-existing bond and is then held up by mutual care for the ethos of the relationship itself that just so happens to give the byproduct of social fulfillment. The traditional way is one where you change, grow, and improve to become closer and more connected with the others that you share relationships with, together bringing you closer not just to each other but also to a higher self-actualized state, whereas the modern one is one where you remain static without improvement in a lower state of self-actualization. The modern individualistic way is a lower path, cursed to never be fulfilling because of self-aggrandization. For the reason of becoming complete, it is important to find others that share the bond of being like you, and to solidify those bonds into connections and relationships, and to form groups together with the people we can interconnect with the best. Because fundamentally, we humans are social. Fundamentally, we cannot live without being a collective. We are an organism. We are no different from the cells that make up our body, except we are more complex. The proof is that a group of social creatures are not just social organisms, but rather a singular organism with a greater disconnection between its parts. And we are one of those. We fundamentally can't live without each other, and disconnecting someone from other people is no different than disconnecting them from their limbs. We can only be truly complete and reach the zenith of human existence with others, together. Humanity is one of the most complex organisms in the world. We need each other. We need people like us. We need people not like us. We need connection to function. And only embracing that will bring us our place in the world. Only when we find our place in the world and the connection we have to everything else and accept them instead of trying to conquer everyone and everything for our own individual self and ego shall we be in completion and harmony. This is not just true in the way that humans are connected to each other, but also on a cosmic scale. The entire world is interconnected in some way, not just all humans, but all life is, and all non-living things. And because of that, we can only live if the other parts remain. We need animals, and we need plants, and we need all else to live. And that's why protecting the environment is important. And yes, I'm coming out as an environmentalist. The entire world is connected in layers. To humans, at the top is everything, all existence. And then there is living things. And then there are many layers of gradually closer related forms of life, at the bottom of which is species. And then there is nation. And then there is acquainted people. And then there is family. And then there is individual and partner. And then there is individual. And after that, there's organs. And after those are cells. I'm skipping some layers, I know, but after those cells are the components of a cell, and after them are atoms, all with their own place in connection to everything else, some greater than others, but all important, and all things that must be preserved and respected, all something that has its own place in order through cosmic harmony. All is connected, and because of that, we must live in harmony with it all. Because every single atom, every being, every superorganism, we're all connected, and we have a special relationship to each, whether it be our brother, an atom in our body, or our pet's genus. Only finding and knowing our place will give us peace. But the most important is to find a place among people, to not be selfish and see everyone in every interaction as something that can yield a benefit to yourself, but as something that must be nurtured, as something inherently good, as something we inherently need, in a way where we look at it with love-tinted eyes for the sake of itself and not for the love it can potentially give us. It is important to form connections for the sake of the relationships themselves and not for the sakes of yourselves.